Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. I am your host, Robert Winfrey, and oh boy, last night. I need to apologize a little bit to start with. I'm feeling a bit under the weather here, so if my thoughts trail off or if I lose my train of thought kind of thing, I'm blaming the headache and the just general kind of crappiness that's in my body at the moment. So hopefully you'll all bear with me. On the docket tonight, we'll be reviewing last night's event, the UFC on ESPN Plus 9. It was Donald Cerrone versus Iaquinta as your main event. Boy, did that card suck. I mean, oh god, that might be the worst event of the year. That includes like the event in Russia, and there's some other small one that took place at some ungodly hour. This event was just awful. So we'll go through that. We'll also have a preview of UFC 237, which comes your way this coming Saturday. On paper, that does not look awful, so we'll have to see in practice and how much falls apart or loses itself between now and then because MMA, but so we'll have a preview of that, and then all the news of the week. The big fight announcement, there was one they made last night that we'll touch on, and I think a few others, and then any of the major news that came out over the last week. So you all know most of the format by now. Anyway, here with me, as usual, my partner in crime, Jeff Harris, is with us. Jeff, nice to have you. How you doing?
Take them and cast your light upon us, for the night is dark and full of terrors. Welcome back, everybody. Hey, Robert, considering I'm on day 2 of my water fast, I'm not dead yet, so no complaints.
Well, good luck to you. That's going to be miserable.
It's not that bad, actually.
Yeah, just for the record, when you say Waterfest, is that like you can drink stuff that's just not pure water, or?
I'm just drinking pure water right
now. Oh, you're only drinking pure. My mistake. I misunderstood. No, yeah, that'll be good. That's a lot of fun, actually, to go through those every now and then.
I've had worse feelings, to be frank.
Yeah. All right.
Sometimes
last night,
I get cravings sometimes, but like when I do that, I just drink more water. So
the amount of times you can stifle cravings for food and whatnot by just downing a glass of water is surprisingly high.
Yeah.
All right. Last night,
I've heard. Sorry to go on this, but
go ahead.
Bad things, but like, I honestly don't feel terrible now at all. Like, or hangry or anything, But yeah. All right, here we go.
All right, last night, UFC on ESPN Plus 9. They were in Ottawa, which is the capital of Canada, and that was a lot of fun. This
card Donald Cerrone or Cowboy is a badass.
You can call it whatever you want.
And then we can just walk away with a better feeling. Let's just call this the night Cowboy was a badass, and we'll be good.
I mean, every night is the night Cowboy is a badass. I mean, yeah, we'll get into some of just the terrible fights from last night. But your main event, there were 2.5 good. There were like 2 good fights and 1 good beatdown on this card. The main event was a pretty good fight. Donald Cerrone defeats Iaquinta via unanimous decision. 2 49-45s, 1 49-46. I was 49-46. They were under the old scoring rules. They were under the old rules last night. And the scoring criteria is slightly different under the old rules as opposed to under the new rules. Under the new rules, I would have agreed with a 10-8. I think it was third. I can't remember if it was the third or the fourth when Cerrone dropped him with those front kicks.
I think the first time he dropped him was the third, wasn't it?
Well, he dropped him at one point. I think in the third with a jab.
The front kick, I think, was round 4.
Yeah, the start of round 4 was when he landed the front kicks. So I would have gone with round 4 as the 10-8.
Was that not an Anderson Silva spider kick? Come on.
It's a front kick to the face.
Yeah, the spider kick.
I have never heard anyone call it that other than you.
Anderson Silva calls it the spider kick.
Well, of course he does. He's an egomaniac.
But similar technique, yes?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a front kick to the face is a front kick to the face. Yeah.
And you have to give it up to Iaquinta's toughness, because Cerrone
Dude,
went after him bad, and he could not put Iaquinta away.
Iaquinta's chin is made of something else, man. He walked into a knee in the first round that would have slept a lot of people. I mean, he got dropped, he got kicked, he got just abused. The fact that he was able to stick it out and to have as much success as he did in intermittent bursts throughout the entirety of this fight. Yeah, a lot of credit needs to go to Al for just being an incredibly tough fighter. But he was also incredibly limited in this fight, and I think that's what
Yeah,
largely led to Cerrone's success.
I think I kind of gave him the edge in round 2, honestly.
I can't remember. It might have been round 2 that I gave to Al. He got 1 round. I think it was 2.
I just felt as the fight kept going on, it just kept edging more towards Cerrone until I think round 3, where he more toward the end of round 3, I guess, where he kind of completely took over the fight. Just broke. Started, maybe broke is not the operative word, but really just sort of started breaking down Iaquinta. It felt like a war of attrition at times, and it was one that Cerrone won.
Yeah, I don't think he broke him mentally. I do think he broke. When we say broke in this instance, again, it's not a mental thing. It's not like Al Iaquinta ever quit. But there was a point at which his game, his defense, his offense, etc., was irreparably damaged by Cerrone. And I do agree with you, it was probably the 3rd round. Again, and Al had some success in places. He was able to land some decent hooks, but he never really strung anything together as far as his offense goes. And Cerrone just kept very busy. He kept busy with leg kicks. He kept busy with his jab. And anytime they kind of got into a bit of a firefight, Cerrone would back off, reset, and not let things get out of hand. This was a really kind of solid all-around performance from Cerrone. And Cerrone overcame some adversity too. Again, not as much, but he got hit a few times. He got wobbled once.
You can't forget, Cerrone is the man who at one point won how many fights in a row at lightweight? 8 or 9?
I don't think he got that many.
I think he got 8.
I have to double check. Hang on.
Yeah, it was 8. He had 8.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, that led up to his title shot. Yeah.
That was a run that included wins over Eddie Alvarez and Benson Henderson.
Edson Barboza, Jim Miller, John McDessie, Adriano. Yeah, he beat some really quality guys on that run.
And now he's back at lightweight. He's looking good, and now he's a contender again. This one solidly puts him back into the top 5. So, do you think Cerrone is in the conversation for all-time great lightweight? Or maybe not top 5 best, but I feel like he should be in there, maybe top 10.
If you were to ask me to put together a list of the 10 best lightweights in all of MMA or in just the UFC?
UFC, let's say UFC, in UFC history.
Okay, limiting the discussion to their performances under the UFC or UFC legacy, so we'll include the WEC for the sake of argument here.
I think he's in there.
We'd have to include parts of strike. Well, again, I bring that up just because there's at least like 3 guys then that we immediately disqualify because when they got to the UFC, they were either completely shot or a few of them just never fought in the UFC.
Gilbert
Melendez, Gomi, a guy who legitimately never fought in the UFC, Joachim Hansen, at one point was legitimately one of the 5 best lightweights in the world, but never fought in the UFC.
I like Hansen too, and I think it's valid, but you know.
And again,
look, I mean, Eddie Alvarez, who was seen as one of those top lightweights outside the UFC, came to the UFC, eventually became champion, lost to Cerrone in his first fight out in the UFC, decisively. Does that not count for anything in your book?
It does. I'm just, you asked a very specific question, so I'm kind of running through it in my head.
I mean, to me, to just win 8 fights in a row in one of the most competitive stacked divisions in all of MMA, that included back-to-back wins over UFC lightweight champions. I mean, sorry, not back-to-back, but he's beaten 2 UFC champions in that run. And now he's come back down, and he's now solidly back on at the contender level. Now, honestly, if you were to ask me if Cerrone were to get matched up for the UFC lightweight title for his next fight, does he win? No, I don't think he does. I don't think he ever wins the title. And you know what, Robert? I don't even think he beats Conor McGregor. That's probably one of the few lightweight matchups at that level where I think Conor would win. And I think you would probably agree, yes?
I might lean a little towards Conor, but
I mean, and you know I love Cowboy, but I think I lean toward Conor if that fight ever happens. And
yeah, I would. Gosh, some of that's so dependent on externalities for McGregor, but I would lean.
Cowboy ever winning the belt just because it's just because of the holes in his game and because he struggles so much emotionally. He talked about it last night. He felt terrible last night, apparently.
Okay, let me say this about Cerrone then. I'm not sure I can answer your question about is he one of the 10 all-time great UFC lightweights. He's probably around that perimeter. I will say this about Cerrone unequivocally. He is the best fighter to never wear a UFC belt in the UFC.
The best, you would say.
I mean, again, there's a few other guys that are maybe in that orbit right now, but I think Cerrone is probably the best fighter to have never won a UFC belt.
At least right now he is.
Yeah.
I would say.
I mean, again, I can't speak to the future, but
he has the record. He has the record for most.
He has so many records
ever. Now, but I mean, let me ask you this: does his records alone put him in the conversation for a legit Hall of Fame induction?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
about that last night. And I would think so, because I mean, I feel like you shouldn't have to be a champion to get into the Hall of Fame necessarily.
I agree with you. I agree with that on principle. I think the point is made that if you never become a champion, you have to have other incredible things to put you in the Hall of Fame. I think Cerrone absolutely has other incredible things.
Like, have you ever heard of Craig Biggio or Jeff Bagwell?
Probably not.
All right. Well, there are baseball players in the Baseball Hall of Fame who are not world champions, So it's not, you can have this, but you need to have the stats. You need to have the stats and other accolades to back it up. So that was just my thought process there for Cerrone.
Yeah, I think there's a slight difference. I mean, there's always going to be a difference when you talk about a team sport versus an individual sport. But yeah, I think Cerrone has absolutely the type of career that belongs in the Hall of Fame at this point, whether he ever wins the belt or not.
Yeah. All right. I think that's fair, but that was a good main event, though. I enjoyed it.
Oh God, that card needed that fight so badly.
Especially after that co-main event.
Oh God, yeah. So Cerrone says he wants to fight for the belt, or Conor if Conor's willing to fight in the July-ish.
How weird is it that happens the night that Walt Harris of all people gets a 1 minute knockout?
At this point, look, Walt Harris only had, I believe the collective UFC record of people Walt Harris has beaten in the UFC. So the collective UFC record of people who have lost to Walt Harris within the UFC is like 2-15.
His opponent was 9-1.
Yeah, overall, but now 0-1 in the UFC. I mean, look, Walt Harris only beats people who should not be in the UFC, basically.
Right. Sergey Spivak was probably a bit of a cab driver.
Look, Spivak is going to wind up as Greg Hardy's next opponent. Anyway, the actual co-main event was Derek Brunson defeating Elias Theodorou via unanimous decision to 29-28, 130-27. I cannot endorse ever watching this fight. But
I have a question. Do you ever want to see Elias Theodorou fight again?
No, that's been my stance for at least 2.5 years.
Wow.
Look, I know a lot of people came down hard on this fight for good reason. The number of people who don't seem to realize that every Elias Theodorou fight looks like this is shockingly high. Like, this is what his fights look like. This is what the Eric Anders fight looked like. This is what the Trevor Smith fight looked like. Not so much the Dan Kelly fight, but that's largely because Dan Kelly's old and mostly immobile, and I love Dan Kelly, but
he doesn't get the medical marijuana. They won't give him a TUE.
That has nothing to do with the fact that he thinks it's a good idea to jog away from his opponent, try to kick off the cage, and do a loopy, spinny leg kick.
If he had his TUE, he could, like, get his medicine, and all the synapses would be firing correctly.
Yeah, because really, just one more standing back fist would have done it.
I mean, who knows?
This fight was awful. Watch this fight only for comedic value.
That was like early UFC Derek Brunson, wasn't it?
I don't know. I'd have to look back.
I remember his first fight in the UFC against Chris Lieben was bowling shoe ugly.
Yeah.
It was an awful fight. At UFC 155.
Yeah. No, that absolutely was. I mean, the Lorenz Larkin fight wasn't all that great either. I mean, Brunson's had these kind of hot and cold performances. He knew he needed a win. He's not only coming off back-to-back losses, but back-to-back finishes in the first round. He fought like a guy who really just needed to win against a guy who is
Theodorou. Like, where's the sense of urgency from Theodorou, who's gets a co-main event slot? Gets a bigger name opponent, an opponent he needs to beat if he wants to progress in his career, and it just doesn't look like he even wanted to beat Brunson. You know what I mean?
I mean, again, this is just how he fights, and it's always awkward. It's always kind of terrible to look at, but then again, for some reason, people forget that.
But, like, Brunson was ranked in the top 10. Like,
I believe he was number 9, 8 or 9.
He's 9. So, I mean,
Theodorou was what, 13?
This could have been huge for his career. I'm like, I don't know. It just didn't. I don't even know if Theodorou wants to be a fighter.
I don't know. I mean, if he didn't want to, he wouldn't have to. I mean, he can do other things, but he just fights the way he fights, and it's terrible to watch. I've never enjoyed an Elias. I don't think.
But I feel like we've seen his ceiling at this point. Would you agree?
Yeah, unless there's some major shift. Yeah, we've seen his ceiling, and it's about where he is.
But yeah, we have seen fighters improve and get better. I just don't see that happening with Theodorou.
It would seem on the more unlikely side of things, yeah. All right. Next up, our other good fight of the evening. Shane Burgos defeated Cub Swanson via split decision. 130-27 for Swanson, 130-27 for Burgos, and 129-28 for Burgos. I was 30-27 Burgos. That said, the way this fight played out, I knew the scores were going to be all over the place. It was just that kind of fight.
One judge go the other way. We had one judge go all the way Burgos, one went all the way Swanson. I mean, what?
Yeah, and here's the thing about that. Much as I disagree with 30-27 Swanson, this was the kind of fight that seems tailor-made for judges to be able to point at a fight and go, no, look, this is what I saw. This is why I scored it that way. So and the action was good. I'm not even gonna get on my soapbox and whine about it.
You are solidly in the camp that Burgos won that fight.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. All right.
But again, that was a good fight. Those two did what they normally do. Swanson had some success with occasional flurries, but Burgos weathered the storm. Burgos stayed busy. Good jabs, good leg kicks, just kind of good pressure from Burgos all the way around. The size difference in this fight was more significant than I thought it would be. I mean, when they squared up, it looked like a featherweight fighting a lightweight. Burgos is a large man for that division.
Yeah, he's a fairly big featherweight.
But this was the only other fight like on this entire card really worth watching. So
Swanson he drops 0-4 now.
Yeah, and again, he got a little bit of leeway for the previous 3-fight skid because I believe it was like Holloway, Ortega, and Moicano. Edgar. Sorry, it wasn't Holloway's Edgar.
Edgar and Moicano. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, and
should get some leeway. I agree.
Oh yeah, and I mean, again, those 3 guys like that's top of the heap stuff. But you drop this one to Burgos.
I want to keep Swanson in the UFC, and I want to give him a more winnable fight next one out. But we'll see.
I mean, Swanson brings a fair amount of value. He's a pretty reliable commodity as far as reliably entertaining fights.
Reliable presence employee, however you want to classify independent contractors. Yeah.
But yeah, he's definitely got to win his next one because again, Burgos isn't a scrub, but losing 4 in a row is.
I mean, even now, this win only puts Burgos, I think, 5-1
in the UFC. Yeah,
right. He's not. I mean, he could get there eventually, but I mean, to me, he's not like a contender yet.
Oh no, he's not a contender. But
so,
he's an up and coming guy. But this is the kind of fight that Cub of like 3 years ago would have won.
Yeah, and it was competitive, but like he has to win his next fight. I agree. I think we can just do quick hits for the rest of this.
Yeah, let's. All right, Merab Dvalishvili defeated Brad.
You don't need to drag the pain out, right, Robert?
Yeah. I agree. All right, Merab Dvalishvili defeated Brad Katona via unanimous decision, 30-27 across the board. Not a good fight. I appreciate Merab's drive. I mean, that man has a motor, but it seems like he wins because he understands the scoring criteria and just kind of nullifies a lot of his opponents while doing enough to win rounds. More than he just, damages and outpaces and outworks them in a significant way. So I don't know. Walt Harris defeated Sergey Spivak via TKO 50 seconds into the first round. At least it was fast. Again, we've seen kind of the ceiling for Walt Harris. I think anyone who's really any good will beat him. And as for Spivak, I don't know. I mean, he'll probably get another fight, and I don't know. This was a pretty rough loss. I don't think he did anything of any import in that fight. Andrew Sanchez defeated Marc-Andre Barrio via unanimous decision, 29-28 across the boards. Anytime Andrew Sanchez wins a fight, it's probably a crappy fight. Good second round, and that's not just because that's the round Barrio won, but they both that was the round that kind of actually had action, and then rounds 1 and 3, not so much. Your beatdown of the evening, Macy Chasson defeated Sarah Morris via TKO 2 minutes, 22 seconds into the second round. This was just a beating. Credit to Morris for coming out and for trying to win, but she was outmatched just pretty much everywhere. Vince Morales defeated Ayman Zahabi via unanimous decision, 29-28 across the boards. This fight sucked. Nordine Taleb defeated Kyle Prepolek via unanimous decision, 30-27 across the boards. Prepolek looked more like a lightweight, and that seems to be his more natural weight class. The scores are accurate, largely on the uneventful side of things, but Matt Sales defeated Kyle Nelson via arm triangle choke in the third round. Sales dominated the first round, got dominated in the second, came back in the third. Again, not the worst thing in the world, but I don't think there's anything that you would miss out on if you just didn't see this fight. Arjun Buller defeated Juan Adams via unanimous decision. 229-28, 130-27. Watching this fight will actively make your life worse. Please don't. And Cole Smith defeated Mitch Gagnon via unanimous decision. 229-28, 130-27. I can barely remember that this fight actually happened. Maybe that's just attrition from the event. But I mean, Mitch Gagnon just the time off, some of the injuries. It's just it seems like maybe he missed his moment, and now he's just kind of taking up some space. But anyway, that was the rest of the card. So, Jeff, anything you'd like to touch on? Anything stand out to you?
Boom heavyweights.
Yay, Walt Harris. Oh, he had the dumbest line about his win last night. Like, there's no limit to my ceiling. Like, buddy, there's no limit to how hot your drug test has been coming back. All right. Anyway, so thank you to those who read my coverage of that, be that live or after the fact. I know it was a pretty terrible event, and not a lot of people seem interested, and I don't blame you. All right. For those of you who are interested, you can read my full report in the MMA Zone of 411 Mania if you are so inclined, and I'd like to think it's better than actually watching most of that card. So, all right, next week we have UFC 237, excuse me, and the UFC is back in they're in Rio for this, Rio de Janeiro. Main event, as of this recording, it is Rose Namajunas, the women's strawweight champion, defending her title against Jessica Andrade. This is a good fight. This is your undisputed champion in Rose, the undisputed number one contender in Andrade. This is a good fight. I'm torn on this fight a little bit because Rose has been looking good. She's on a 3-fight winning streak that includes against stopping Joanna, beating her in a rematch. Then there's Andrade, and Andrade is a small tank. Andrade also on a 3-fight winning streak. Her only loss at strawweight is to Joanna. She's coming off of that brutal knockout over Karolina Kowalkiewicz. For me, a lot of this comes down to how these two match up specifically. And that's why I'm kind of leaning towards Andrade. Rose has developed her game very, very significantly, and I will not be surprised if she wins. Let me be very clear about that. But a lot of her footwork is more kind of in and out, and she seems to not have, and bear in mind, this is something that could have been addressed in her time since, and given that Trevor Whitman is a very good coach, it most likely he's at least attempted to address it. But she doesn't move well around the ring. She's not always as mindful of her position in the cage, especially if she's on the back foot. When she's going forward, she's fine.
Has she ever faced a real, just aggressive, powerful, like tank like Andrade before?
I don't think so. I mean, there's not too many. There really aren't too many women like Jessica Andrade.
That's kind of part of why I'm leaning. Like, Joanna is she's more of a counter puncher. Wouldn't you agree? A counter striker, kickboxer counter striker.
Especially when she fought Rose, that was the style she was employing.
And Torres is more of a grappler wrestler, right? Tisha Torres, who they both.
Yeah.
Torres is not a striker. Come on.
Well, yeah, I mean, her background is technically striking, and the question is whether or not she employs it. And she certainly does not employ it the same way that Andrade does. Torres is more of a kicker, karate stylist.
Michelle Watterson, I guess, is more of a karate striker, kickboxer, right?
Yeah, and
there's a karate Muay Thai background.
Well, and Michelle also, again, is not just kind of the dogged pursuer of offense that Andrade is. And
yeah, I just feel like I'm not saying that Rose can't deal with that and can't overcome that. It's just we've never seen her deal with it, right? I don't feel like we have.
No, I would agree with that. And I mean, the closest you might have come is the Paige Van Zandt fight, and Van Zandt is so far removed from the refinement that Andrade has that it barely bears even bringing up the comparison.
Man, I'm picking Andrade, Robert.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards Andrade as well. I think
Well,
she's
yeah,
gonna.
like you, I see. Rose is very good. She's developed her game. She is very technical. I can see ways she can win this fight, but I'm just all the problems Andrade presents. I feel are going to be problematic for Rose. Is how I see it going.
Yeah, there's a few weapons that I think Rose has that could cause Andrade problems, but they also don't trouble me if I'm Andrade the same way that
Power. She has power. We know that.
yeah, both women have power. Rose is less of a combination striker. She tends to be one or two and done. And some of that might simply be the offense, the opponents she's faced, where she made a tactical decision. Andrade is much more 18 punches in a row. She just swarms you if she gets half a chance.
Rose is also a very good grappler and has good submissions. Has that too.
She does. I worry that because Andrade does as well, and
right.
I don't think that the disparity there is going to be enough. I think it might be. It's one of those instances where Rose is a very good grappler, but Andrade is probably good enough to stifle it, and then as Rose just kind of gets lost in the grappling, she's losing the round and getting hit in the face the whole time. But if she can grab something in transition, that's probably her best bet because
let me just say, if Rose were to win this fight, though, I would not be upset, and it would not be too surprising for me.
No. Again, Rose has power. Rose has a good left hook. Rose can grab things in transition if you're not careful. If Rose is mindful of her positioning in the cage and spends a lot of time working and fighting off of the back foot in preparation for this fight, she can win.
Mm-hmm.
But I also worry about her body and I don't mean that in some kind of bizarre way, she's been a little soft to the body on occasion, and Andrade digs body shots.
Body shots can be deadly. They do damage when you do that.
They do a lot of damage, especially when you throw them like Andrade does.
I think they're very overlooked in this game.
They are. They really are. So I'm leaning towards Andrade, but I expect a pretty good fight. This one has some potential to it. Your co-main event. This is a weird one. It just is. Anderson Silva is fighting Jared Cannonier. Anderson Silva has one win since 2012. He beat Stephan Bonner, went on a big losing streak. I mean, okay, the no contest with Nick Diaz, fine, no contest. So at least he didn't not a loss, but at the moment not a win.
Even though Anderson Silva lives in Southern California now.
Yeah, his only win was that weird decision over Derek Brunson from 208 that, frankly, I thought he lost.
Oh, right.
And then you have Jared Cannonier, who's fought in the UFC at light heavy. He fought at heavyweight and light heavyweight, and now middleweight. I mean, he debuted at heavyweight with a loss to Sean Jordan, then a win over Cyril Asker. Then he moves to light heavyweight, has a so-so career there. He went like 2-3. He has a
mediocre record. He's 4-4.
He's 4-4 in the UFC. Drops to middle.
So
5? 3.
Like 0.500.
Oh, he's 5-5 actually in the UFC. Jeez, sorry, my mistake. Then he goes down to middleweight, knocks out David Branch.
Wait, what was the fifth one?
Well, he has losses to Dominic Reyes, Jan Blachowicz, Glover Teixeira, and yeah, sorry, this is what I get for being under the weather. He is 5-4. He is 5-4,
and I'm the one who's water fasting.
Yeah, no, sorry, you're correct. He's 4-4. I can't count today.
Yeah, 0.500.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm torn on this one because
is this a way for a scrub like Cannonier to get a win over a legend?
I mean, Cannonier's not a scrub.
He kind of is.
He's been struggling a bit, but he's also kind of been trying to really find himself, and I think he has at middleweight.
I mean, how good of a win is it really beating David Branch?
It's pretty good.
Pretty good, but do you consider David Branch an all-time great fighter? Because like he did well outside of the UFC, but that's about the only place where he does well.
I don't consider him an all-time great fighter, but I do consider him a very difficult hurdle to get over.
Like since he came back to the UFC, he's gone 1-3. With the only win being over Thiago Santos at middleweight, which is a solid win. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, again, Branch isn't an all-time great, but he's a difficult guy to beat.
Look, here are his wins in the World Series of Fighting. Jesse Taylor. What do you think of Jesse Taylor?
Who am I to doubt JT Money?
All right. Yushin Okami, I would say that's a solid, even in 2014, that's a solid victory, and I think you would agree, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Jesse McElligott, Teddy Holder, Clifford Starks, Vinny Magalhaes, Lewis Taylor, Christoph Yatko. I mean, fighters.
No, Yatko was in the UFC.
Okay. So the last one was Lewis Taylor. So he's 2-3 since making it. I mean, that's not a great record to me, Robert.
His UFC run is not great, but again, I think he's he's not an easy guy to beat necessarily. I mean, and if you look at his UFC losses, that's Luke Rockhold, Jack Hermanson, and crap, I can't remember off the top of my head who that other.
It's a weird fight. I don't know if I like this fight, but
it's kind of. I think on paper it's somewhat designed to let Anderson Silva kind of show a little bit of what Anderson Silva used to be, because Jared Cannonier is predominantly a striker. He's still an older Anderson Silva who is not as deadly as he used to be, not as scary, and has slowed down. Yeah, and his chin's not what it used to be either.
Correct. That's huge.
I actually kind of like Cannonier's chances here. He's a pretty dogged forward fighter. He's got power. And I just as long as he doesn't psych himself out, I think.
But he's 9 years younger than Anderson.
Yeah, Anderson's old. Jeez.
44.
Yeah. I got Cannonier. I think they're kind of trying to set up Anderson with one of the most winnable fights they can come up with on paper in terms of how they match up stylistically, and I still think Cannonier's probably going to win.
I kind of wish Anderson would have retired a while. You know, I understand, but it's just like, it's tough.
I agree.
I mean,
yeah, I'm not
big if. This is a big if. Big. If he were to have some sort of outstanding, pure Anderson Silva performance, I really wish this would be the moment where he calls it a day.
That would be nice, because it's not going to get any better than what he could potentially accomplish here with a win.
Had Nogueira done it in 2013 when he should have, it wouldn't. You know, maybe it's not perfect, but like that's the best note he could have gone out on. Because almost no fighter in this sport gets that, Robert.
It's unbelievably rare for that set of circumstances to come together. And yeah, you really should kind of capitalize on it when you can. All right, next up.
You know what? It might be crazy. I'm going to go ahead and pick Anderson.
Go for it. I mean, I don't know who's going to... I don't really know. I lean towards Cannonier just based on current trends, but I'm going to be rooting for Anderson to pull it out one more time and then hopefully retire. Because
Nog should have retired after Dave Harper. There you go.
He should. Oh, yeah. He absolutely should have.
Got to finally fight at home, won at home, looked amazing. And then he fought Verdum and got finished. It's stupid.
Well, I mean, he really should have stopped after the Struve fight, because I believe that was also in Brazil.
He did stop after the Struve fight, but that's...
Oh, no. What am I thinking of then? I could have sworn there was one more.
He got knocked out by Roy Nelson.
I remember that. I don't know. For some reason, I thought there was one other one in there apart from the Herman win. But
Verdum was in Brazil.
all right, I'm just misremembering then. All right, next up, the fight I'm actually looking forward to the most on this card. Jose Aldo will be fighting Alexander Volkanovski, and
as far as we know,
at the moment, that's what's on the cards. I'd like to think that if there was a real serious issue that had arisen from because it was reported several weeks ago, like maybe a month or so, that Aldo was
March. That Aldo had a bacterial infection.
Yeah, and that he was dealing with it, but it did put his participation in this card in jeopardy.
They said it was still like he was still expected to go forward with the fight, but you never know with bacterial infections. If they build up, they're no joke.
Oh yeah.
It may sound innocuous, but a bacterial infection can cause a ton of problems.
I mean, staph is just a bacterial infection. Staph is unbelievably devastating if you don't deal with it properly.
No.
I mean, pneumonia will kill you too, and that's kind of the same thing.
So Aldo's not going to pull out.
Yeah, I at this point I kind of expect the fight to go through unless something new comes up. At this point, I don't expect it to be a complication related to. Well, I don't expect that issue. If something drastically complicates
I just hope Volkanovski is really confident in his skills.
Oh, he's confident. He asked for the fight.
I mean, it's a huge fight for him, but at the same time, it's a huge risk. Huge.
Oh yeah, look, I've been high on Volkanovski for a while. Dude's undefeated in the UFC. He's been beating a steadily increasing level of opposition. He just came off beating Chad Mendes and basically retiring Mendes, apparently. If he can get this win, he's unequivocally the number one contender if Volkanovski beats Jose Aldo. I mean, that will be the second best run up to a title shot since Holloway's. It's that impressive a run he's on, quite frankly.
And Aldo's on a good run himself right now since losing the belt.
Yeah, since those losses to Holloway, he's finished both Jeremy Stevens and Renato Moicano, and those were not easy fights. But, his finishing sequence for both of them was brilliant. I mean, he collapsed Stevens with that body shot, and then he went full on like serial killer psycho on Moicano for that finishing sequence. It was pretty darn great. Oh god. I can't really I hate picking against Jose Aldo as a general rule because it almost always leads to me looking like an idiot. But and elements of what Volkanovski does are kind of not designed, but they do play into some of Aldo's strengths. Aldo, again, a very good defensive fighter, very good at finding openings. The big thing for me is Volkanovski's pressure, because Volkanovski has very, very good footwork. He's very, very good at continuing to keep you pressured against the fence as long as he's the one going forward. He's good at finding his own offense. He has pretty serious ground and pound if he gets you down. He has good striking on the feet too. Again, the Mendes fight's a really good example of that. It's just, again, I can't really pick against Jose Aldo right now. Depending on at this level of opposition, I can't really pick against him. I mean, it takes something really special for me to pick against Jose Aldo, and much as I'm high on Volkanovski and much as I think he's going to be in the title picture, I don't think right now he rises to that level.
Holloway, and
I did
like Volkanovski, but he's not Max Holloway to me yet. And he could be. He could be a great contender soon, but I don't quite see it yet.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am. Again, I think Volkanovski is going to be in the title picture. I'm not sure he's going to get there off of a win. I'm not sure he's going to get there based on this fight.
I'm picking Aldo.
Yeah. I'm kind of rooting for Volkanovski, though, which is one of the first times I've ever not really kind of rooted for Jose, but Well, recently. I did root for Max in both of their fights. But
Okay.
this is a fight. This is one to watch. So hopefully that fight still holds together, and that should be a really good one. All right, Thiago Alves will be fighting Loreno Strapoli. Was this always this fight? Boy, are they giving Alves an easy out here. I don't know if they're just trying to set him up for retirement. And in fairness, Alves is 35. He's been with the UFC since 2005. Yeah, his first fight for the UFC was in 2005. He's been there for a while. He's coming off of a split decision win that I don't think he won. I do think they're kind of trying to set him up.
Had an embarrassing attempt to try and become a lightweight.
Yeah, that was bad.
Miserably.
That was so bad.
To me, it was worse, but, you know.
Oh, I mean, again, not only did he miss weight, he missed weight badly. And, again, this is one of those things that maybe I've just been around the sport long enough to remember these things. I remember when the talk around Thiago Alves was he's too big for welterweight. He's going to go up to middleweight. Now I want to try my hand at lightweight. Come on. Staropoli is Argentinian? Huh. No, he's going to get booed. He's 8-1 overall. He won his UFC debut. He beat Hector Aldana. I don't even remember that fight, and I know I covered it. Again, they're kind of setting up Alves here.
It's a winnable fight for 2019 Alves, but we'll see.
Yeah. And again, I think they are kind of trying to nudge him out the door.
Alves is not, he's not the contender he used to be, but he is skilled. And he is dangerous.
Yeah, you can't take him for granted. We have a pretty good lightweight fight, actually, next. Francisco Trinaldo is back for... Oh, God, that finish over Evan Dunham was so brutal. Trinaldo is back.
He's doing it for the old dads.
He is. There's a few of the old dudes out there with the old man strength going on. He's fighting Carlos Diego Ferreira, who is on...
he's having a bit of a surge recently.
Yeah, he's on a 4-fight winning streak. He's finished 2 of those. Coming off of that win over Rustam Khabilov. This is a really solid fight, actually.
He did miss weight in that fight, though.
I think Khabilov missed weight.
No, Ferreira missed weight.
He did. Yeah, you are correct.
And Khabilov, not a world beater, but he's very underrated. Like, yeah, that fight, he had a good win streak.
Oh yeah, very good. I mean, yeah, Khabilov's only losses in the UFC, I think, right now are to Ferreira and like Benson Henderson.
Like Khabilov has always been good. He just hasn't had like the big wins, you know?
Yeah. I'm torn here because while Ferreira has power, he's a bit sloppy on the feet, and Trinaldo's a very sharp striker.
And he's hittable.
Yeah. And if this hits the mat, though, Ferreira is a whiz on the ground. Yeah, he's a jiu-jitsu.
I'm going with Ferreira here, but it's a fun matchup.
Yeah, I think I'm going to lean towards Ferreira as well, but this is a good choice to open the pay-per-view. That should be a pretty good fight.
It's weird because like Ferreira came in, and he was sort of like an underdog who got some good upsets, and then he lost back-to-back fights to Dariush and Poirier, and then he was kind of like absent for quite a while, I feel like.
Yeah, he took some pretty serious time off after the Aubin Mercier win. He was off for about 2 years.
Yeah,
a little over.
But he's been looking good ever since he came back, so we'll see.
As for the prelims, Little Nog is getting a gimme as he fights Ryan Spann.
Goodness gracious.
Little Nog still fighting. 42 years old.
Nice.
Coming off of that knockout win over Sam Alvey.
And who the heck is he fighting?
Oh, I believe a guy who has 1 fight in the UFC.
Are they that desperate to get some big names, some big Brazilian names on this card, Robert?
Yes.
Let's see. a Tuesday night contenders guy.
Yeah, he fought once in the UFC and beat Luis Enrique.
So we should probably pick Ryan Spann, right?
Logically, yes. Again, I have some very, very fond memories of Little Nog, but I struggle to actually pick him at this point.
Wow, that's Kahea. Remember her?
We all hang on. Thiago Moises will fight Kurt Holloway. Moises, he's fought in the UFC, I believe. Yeah, he lost to Beneil Dariush. Oh god, that fight. I shouldn't say that as though it's some awful negative. It was just kind of what it was. He just couldn't deal with Dariush's top game. And Holloway, 17-6. He's fought in the UFC. Has yet to win in the UFC. He has losses to Hani Barcelos and Shane Burgos. Yeah, he got armbarred by Burgos. Yeah, they're kind of setting up Moises here. Then yeah, Betchko will fight Irene Aldana. Betchko has one win in her last 5 fights, and that was I thought she won that fight, but boy, was that a bad fight. And she was lucky to get that draw with Marion Renault, and she hasn't. Geez, she's been out for a while.
She was lucky to get a fight with Ronda Rousey at the time.
She benefited from the state of the division. I mean, a lot of people
also beating Ronda's friends.
Yeah, because she beat Jessamine Duke and Shayna Baszler back to back. Yeah, her last fight was when Holly kicked her head off her shoulders, but that was in June of 17, so she's been out for a while. Aldana, by contrast, has been a bit of a disappointment in the UFC. She's gone 2-2. She's on a 2-fight winning streak, but I don't know. I had some pretty legitimate expectations for her. I'm not saying title challenger or champion by any stretch, but again, she just hasn't quite risen to the occasion. But Betchko kind of sucks, so who knows? This is kind of a toss-up. Sure, I'll go with Aldana. Gonna regret it, but why not? Okay. In our sad fight of the evening, BJ Penn will fight Clay Guida.
Why?
This sure would have been a good fight back in Never.
Why is this happening?
Look, I said this on a thing I did last night. There was a point in time when BJ Penn versus Clay Guida at least would have been over relatively quickly, because Guida could not get BJ down, and BJ would have just kind of smoked him up on the feet, and it would have lasted less than 2 rounds.
I just don't know how Dana White can say those things about Tito Ortiz and Chuck Liddell and allow this.
Because Dana has no sense of his own hypocrisy.
Because what he says about Tito Ortiz and Liddell, I agree with every word. I mean, but this is insane, Robert. I mean, come on.
I completely agree.
This should not happen. Period.
I agree. Look, Dana gets to say those things when it's true, and he knows no one's going to call him on it.
Even if you believe Penn is innocent, and that's fine right now, it just sounds like a cage should not be the place where fighting another human being is maybe not where he should be at the moment. Would you also agree with that?
Oh yeah. Look, BJ's last win was over Matt Hughes.
How many years ago was that at this point?
9.
Yeah.
Bear in mind, a win which in and of itself broke a 2-fight losing streak. Then he had the draw with Fitch, and then he's been losing ever since.
Right. I
mean, for God's sake, he got submitted in his last fight out.
And he's retired twice in that time span. I just don't understand it. This isn't a comeback. It's
sad. It's just sad.
To me, this is worse than sadness at this point.
This is the kind of thing that I question the ethics of it. I genuinely question.
I question the regulatory bodies that allow it.
Yeah. BJ, again, there's other guys that I don't think should be in the UFC, I don't think BJ Penn should be allowed to
I
fight.
can almost see how the Ryan Hall fight gets sanctioned, right?
Yeah.
Because it's Ryan Hall. This fight is just maybe because it's Clay Guida is why it's getting sanctioned. I don't know, just because it's Clay Guida.
I don't want to watch this fight. I genuinely don't want to watch this fight. I mean, I can't pick BJ Penn to beat anybody at this point.
It's been hard watching this decline for BJ Penn. It's been, I don't want to say devastating, but you know,
depending on your emotional level of investment in Penn as a fighter, like how much of a fan you are.
He was one of my favorite fighters. I thought those performances against Florian, Sean Shirk, Diego Sanchez was like masterful. You know, it's like in many ways, Robert, I still think his run as lightweight champion is still unparalleled. Because I mean, who has come close since that? Who is Benson Henderson, Frankie Edgar, I guess. Even still, I don't think their performances were as strong as BJ's was when he was on top. You know?
Yeah.
It's so tough. And I
mean, the closest level of dominance you get nowadays is Khabib,
but Khabib has not even he's I guess only defended the belt once technically. Yeah. Now, Frankie, I still think he beat Frankie in that first fight. I know Frankie won, but I scored that fight for BJ Penn. So this whole ordeal has just been, it's terrible. I just don't, I'm mind boggled by it. I can't even put it into words.
Yeah, I genuinely don't think BJ Penn should be sanctioned to fight. I think that's the state of, I think that's where we are with him at this point.
Now he's not even a broken, a past his prime fighter.
No, he's a shell. Like there's past your prime. Like Thiago Alves, he's on the same
40.
card. He's past his prime.
He's 40. Like in fighting years, he's basically an old man, right?
Yeah.
And he's basically been operating as an old man for the past 9 years when his decline started. So this is just awful. Awful.
Yeah. I mean, Guida's going to win. No one's going to care because Clay Guida also kind of sucks.
Why? Okay, Guida gets a win over a broken down 40-year-old BJ Penn who hasn't won a fight in 10 years. Why? Why does this have to happen? It's like, does anyone even care anymore that Tito Ortiz just beat Chuck Liddell for the first time?
I mean, I'm sure Tito cares, but I don't think anyone else.
I think Tito and Chuck for losing to Tito.
I think if you get outside of their immediate orbits, I mean, again, you have Tito, his family as coaches. You have Chuck, his family as coaches. If you get outside that, no, I don't think anyone cares.
The Dennis Siver fight was bad enough. And the UFC calling it BJ Penn continuing his comeback after he got torn apart by Yair Rodriguez. I mean,
you got torn up. You didn't just lose to Yair. You got beat everywhere by Yair Rodriguez. Then you got beat by Dennis Siver. Then you got beat by Ryan Hall. I don't know what we're doing. I genuinely don't know why this exists, why this fight exists at all. It's
especially in light of the recent allegations, whether they're true or not. It just seems like he should not be in a cage and should be getting his personal life in order. Whatever.
I mean, I joke that this fight might get called off when BJ's not allowed to leave the country. But
well, I guess that's not the case. Has BJ been arrested or charged?
No, I don't think he's been charged. I don't think so. But again, it's a bad joke. But
it's still, people complained about, I got to be honest, Robert. Ariel Helwani made a lot of noise about the bad optics around Greg Hardy.
And in fairness, they're pretty bad.
This is I disagree. I think this is far worse.
No. I agree with you that this is worse. I just said, in fairness, the optics on Greg Hardy are not
But, like,
good.
no one's
This is worse.
I have not heard a single peep about the optics of this. And this is 2019 post hashtag Me Too. I'm like, what? Why? Selective priorities, I guess, but it's strange to me. No one's like, maybe it's because it's on the prelims, but like, I have not heard anyone say anything about this fight.
I think everyone just had, and again, let me be clear. This is not a. I'm not trying to give the media a pass on this. Any of them. I mean, I suppose depending on how broadly you want to apply the term media, we technically qualify, and we're talking about it.
Helwani I've not heard him say anything about this fight. When Ariel Helwani practically crusaded against UFC booking Greg Hardy the same night as what was her name?
I think it was Andrea Lee.
Yeah, like he went in hard on that, and he's not said anything about this, and it's very questionable to me. I'm sorry.
Well, everyone's got 6 days to catch up to the reality that BJ Penn is going to fight again, and it's going to be the type of thing that makes you look. BJ Penn fighting in 2019 is the kind of thing you show in commercials or to legislators when you want to make the case that the sport should be illegal. The fact that we sanction this kind of stuff is an active detriment to the legality of the sport. This is ridiculous. This should not be happening. All right, then on Fight Pass we have Luana Carolina, and I'm going to assume I need to see where she's from. She's also Brazilian. I'm gonna stick with my pronunciation until I hear otherwise. She's 5-1. She's making her debut. She won on the Contender Series. She's fighting Priscilla Cachoeira. So I'm picking Luana Carolina because I wouldn't pick Priscilla Cachoeira to beat a heavy bag at this point. Warley Alves will fight Sergio Moraes. Yeah, that's not the worst fight in the world, actually. Moraes coming off of that loss to Rocco Martin. Alves lost to James Krause. It's kind of a tough one. Again, that's a pretty decent fight, actually. I'll go with Moraes because Alves tends to be a bit of a one-round guy. Toledo Bernardo will fight Melissa Gatto. Sorry, that's the first fight. Excuse me. Next would be Hani Barcelos and Carlos Hauchin Cures. He's from Peru. Sorry, I thought Lima for some reason, and Lima is the capital of Peru, not the city, or not the country. This is his UFC debut, and Barcelos is 13-1. He's fought in the UFC before, twice actually. He beat Kurt Holloway and Chris Gutierrez. I'll go with Barcelos there, and then again we have Toledo Bernardo and Melissa Gatto. Bernardo is 1-2 in the UFC. She beat Sarah Morris, but had losses to Irina Aldana and Marion Renault. This is Gatto's UFC debut. I don't know. Probably Bernardo, but you get low-level fighters like that.
Card? BJ Penn is fighting Clay Guida on this card?
Yep.
Oh, we just went over that, didn't we?
Yep. So anyway, that's the rest of the card.
Can't get over this BJ Penn thing.
Just block it from your mind for a minute.
Do I have a problem, Robert, that I can't get over this?
A little bit. Just a little bit.
I can't.
So apart from that, are there any other fights on the prelims that kind of stick out to you?
Let's see. I'm still fixated on the Penguita fight.
Well, let's hope it falls out between now and then.
Really, Alves Moraes, I think, is an okay-ish fight.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good one.
That's really the only one, because I think both those guys are a little underrated.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, again, Moraes has a very good UFC record. Alves is, I think, still the only one to beat Colby Covington.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, he tapped out Colby Covington with a guillotine choke a few years ago.
Alves just wasn't able to keep that momentum going because after.
Well, he fought like Kamaru. I think he went from
Yeah, but he also
Covington
fought
to
Brian
Usman.
Barberena, who's like.
Well, again, Alves is kind of a one-round guy in a lot of respects, and Barberena dealt with his one round and then just kept going.
Barberena is a constant hot and cold fighter, hit and miss fighter.
And then he fought. Then he fought Kamaru Usman, and Usman's the champion for a reason.
Yeah, but still, Brian Barberena. What I mean is Barberena is very beatable. Yeah.
And I mean, Moraes also lost to Usman. Usman knocked him out. That was a pretty gnarly knockout, actually. All right. So yeah, I will have coverage of that on Saturday. I hope you'll all stop by. Again, that's a really solid main card, all things considered. Again, there's some weirdness. Again, Anderson Silva. There's some sadness, but the main event's darn good. Aldo and Volkanovski is a darn good fight, and Trinaldo and Fahey is pretty solid. So it's a really solid card on paper. Let's hope nothing crazy happens between now and then, because we just don't want that. All right. Let's talk about some fight announcements, because we had a few. We had the big one from last night, actually. The UFC is going forward with a rematch between Daniel Cormier and Stipe Miocic. They announced that as the main event of UFC 241. Thank you.
So that's August in Anaheim.
Hey, you guys got another one.
I still won't get approved for it, probably.
Yeah, we'll see. At the moment, but it's
241. That fight, I thought that last fight was postponed, not canceled.
Yeah, yes. Let's just again look, it's been so postponed. This will actually be it.
That's not a postponement unless they bring back the old number.
Yeah, this will actually be UFC 233. They have postponed it until August of 2019.
Right.
Just reuse all the promotion anyway.
Otherwise, it's a cancellation.
Yeah, and look, everyone except the UFC has acknowledged it's canceled. So the UFC spin machine is the UFC spin machine. I'm okay with that fight. I mean, again, if you want to talk about a purely meritocratic argument, Stipe has the best argument in the world for an immediate rematch.
I mean, arguably. He
lost in the first round, uncontroversially.
Only on the merit of the fact that he was the most.
He's the most successful UFC heavyweight champion ever,
and the first and only man to defend the belt 3 times.
Yep.
So, if you want to go, if you're going to go on merit, yes, you can make an argument. But I mean, let's see. Did Benson Henderson get an immediate rematch?
Against Pettis? No.
I mean, there you go.
Well, Benson also only had a couple of title defense. He had 2, right?
He had 3.
Did he actually get to 3?
He had Edgar,
Diaz,
and Gilbert Melendez.
Wait, was it? Yeah, it was Melendez. He fought Melendez. Okay.
And he never got another shot again after that.
True. But that division was also kind of snake bitten with immediate rematches at that point in time.
Tony Ferguson never got
a shot.
His title shot. So, big red flag right there. So, I mean,
again, I also think there's just also not really a better contender than Stipe at the moment. You just don't have that argument. No one else really has claim to that argument at this point in time.
John Jones doesn't want to move up. He doesn't want to fight at heavyweight.
Yeah. And
even then, it's not. Even then, I think Stipe would probably have more merit than John. So
again, good main event. I'm okay with the fight. Again, there's no one getting leapfrogged. There's no one getting denied their due shot. I think the next contender will come out of the upcoming fight between Ngannou and JDS. I think that whoever wins that fight is probably going to be the next contender.
Not getting the Lesnar fight.
Well, apparently Lesnar retired.
Well, that's according to Dana White.
So,
for all we know, this could just be really hardcore negotiations, and that fight will still get booked come July.
Yeah, we'll see.
Stranger things have happened in this sport.
I mean, apparently Brock is still in the USADA testing pool, so. But yeah, I'm okay with that fight. Again, it was a good fight the first time around. It's still a good fight. Yeah. So we also got the main event for the UFC's debut in South Carolina. This would be Fight Night 154. Your main event will be Hanato Moicano and the Korean Zombie. For a Fight Night main event, that's a solid fight. Again, Moicano, one of the rising contenders. His only losses in the UFC are to his only losses at all, are to Brian Ortega and Jose Aldo. And, the Korean Zombie is not the brightest fighter in the world, but
he's the Korean Zombie.
His fights tend to be entertaining, if nothing else. So while I do kind of heavily favor Moicano in that fight, it's a pretty solid main event for for a fight night kind of scenario. That whole card is a little bit iffy. Looking at it right now, it's just an iffy card. I don't know what else to say about it. We will get the UFC debut of Duran Win. That could be interesting. But again, solid enough main event as far as that goes. So let's see. Do we have any other fight announcements that have come out lately? The UFC, I think they announced their return to the Netherlands. They'll be in Amsterdam on September 14th. No fights announced yet, but again, date and venue. That'll be at the Ziggo Dome. We already knew about the Australia card. We already knew about the return to Brazil in November. We already knew 243 was going to be in Sydney. So presumably that fight will be headlined by Robert Whittaker and Israel Adesanya. Which, I mean, that's a great fight. I mean, I've been high on Bobby Knuckles for a while, and the way he and Adesanya match up there's some pretty serious potential for that fight. So,
and for Adesanya to get his first UFC loss.
Yeah. That would be his first loss ever, I think, in MMA. So yeah, that's a really good fight. Hopefully they can make that. I mean, again, you have two.
Here's a new matchup.
All right.
Claudia Gadelha versus Ronda Marcos at UFC 239.
So 239 still getting fleshed out. Gadelha should win that, but she has not looked all that good at strawweight lately.
Marcos, for that matter, though.
No, I mean, Marcos is just kind of what she's always been at this point. She's a 50-50 fighter. I'm kind of surprised Gadelha is still hanging around strawweight. Again, she's not looked all that good lately. And I do kind of think I think she should at least try the waters at flyweight. And maybe it doesn't work out, but for someone who was pretty consistently the second best strawweight in the world for quite some time, she's kind of hit a skid.
So Brandon Moreno signed with the LFA. He's out of the UFC now, so he's going to continue fighting it.
Oh, the babyface assassin. Why?
Yep.
Good
flyweight, man. Whatever's going on.
Well, he had a bit of a he had a bit of a unhappy streak, so hopefully he'll come back. I mean, he was young too, so he was a younger guy in the sport. Let's see. Again, I think that's all the kind of fight announcements we've
kind of the
hit recently.
Major ones.
Oh no, sorry. UFC 238 got a few more fights. Angela Hill is stepping in for an injured Felice Herrig to fight Yan Xiaonan on that card. So I still kind of like Yan. I liked her over Herrig. I still kind of favor her over Hill, but that got switched up.
Not a bad looking card right now.
238 is pretty solid.
I hope we get that Cejudo Moraes fight.
Yeah. Again, you have Cejudo Moraes, you have Shevchenko and you have Jimmy Rivera and Peter Yan is a darn good fight. It's a solid card.
Yeah.
I think that's it for, again, kind of fight shakeups, at least as of this.
What do you make of the Brock Lesnar news?
Yeah, I don't know entirely. I think you're kind of right that this could just be very public negotiations from both parties.
Well, for me, the big thing is that it came from Dana White, and it's not official unless it comes from Dana White. And even when it comes from the fighters, Robert, it's not really official either, is it?
I mean, again, retirements in this sport are a dime a dozen.
I mean, look at BJ Penn, who we were talking about a little while ago. He's retired at least twice.
Yeah, I mean, Tim Kennedy announced he was coming out of retirement a few months ago.
To do what?
Fight.
For who? Bellator?
I think the UFC.
No way.
Yeah. When Tim Kennedy retired, he would have retired under contract still, I think, so.
Did he still have fights left?
I don't know. Okay, he just announced he was coming out of retirement. I don't know whether or not he's going to get out of his UFC deal, whether he had any fights left on that, so who knows, but
I need to see it to believe it.
I mean, I agree with you as far as that goes, but for whatever it's worth, he announced that's his intention.
All right. Good luck.
So, I don't know about Brock. I mean, again, this could just be the UFC kind of putting their foot down and going, you know what, we don't need you. We will move on without you. In fairness, Brock might also have used the threat of going back to the UFC to get whatever he wanted from the WWE. And we'll see him again in the near future, or he gets more money from them. I mean,
it's what the Observer reported. Now, it came from Meltzer in the Observer, so take it for whatever it's worth. He says the retirement likely happened because UFC was unable to meet the price he wanted to go through the process of training and then getting into the cage to fight someone the caliber of Cormier at Lesnar's age. In addition to this, WWE still offers Lesnar big deals for limited dates, and with the schedule he works for them, wrestling is safer and gives him more longevity.
Yeah, I think Brock was just going to go whichever way he felt was the most advantageous for him. If that means he got a better deal from the WWE.
Here's another thing I want to put forth. Since Lesnar's last fight, the UFC altered its pay-per-view model, and now they are their pay-per-views are exclusive to ESPN Plus. And we don't really know any of the numbers for ESPN Plus and how the UFC events have done on there so far. And would Lesnar, who is a big pay-per-view attraction for UFC, stand to lose a lot of money on ESPN Plus? And did that weigh into his decision at all?
I imagine that because Brock's a very intelligent businessman, for whatever other faults or praise you want to heap on him.
Undeniable.
He has absolutely managed his career.
Besides quitting WWE to try out for the Minnesota Vikings. I mean,
even that almost worked out for him. Almost. Again, I'm certainly not going to say it worked out great, but he almost got into the NFL, and the minimum salary for the NFL is pretty stupendous. So who knows? But again, I imagine that if they were going to go to a more limited pay-per-view model like that, and he just probably would have asked for more money to compensate for the loss of pay-per-view points. And again,
he's probably what he did here, and they didn't want to meet it. So
yeah, again,
but I could be wrong. It just feels like, because it came from Dana White, it feels like hardcore negotiations to me. What it feels like.
Yeah, I kind of imagine there was a fair bit of just, no, we want this, no, we want this, and this is kind of the UFC going, we don't need you. And again, I also do kind of imagine that Brock used the threat of going to the UFC to fight again to kind of leverage a better deal from the WWE. So, and again, fair play to him. If you get when you get two other interests competing, bidding on your services against each other. That's kind of when things go the best for you, and he made that situation work for him. Let me put it like this: I won't be surprised if he fights for the UFC again. I won't be surprised if he doesn't. I'm just, at this point, Brock does what Brock's gonna do, and I've kind of given up trying to accurately predict what's going to happen with Brock. So if he never fights again, fair play. If he comes back, we'll see what circumstances lead to it. Either way, Godspeed and party on. He's made a lot of money. He's made a lot of people a lot of money, and I wish him the best in what he does going forward. I don't have anything against Brock. All right. Is there anything else we wanted to touch on?
I'm gonna. I don't know about you.
Let me refresh Twitter again. Just on the off chance that something crazy is broken, because that happens on occasion. Doesn't look like anything crazy is broken. All right. I think that's going to wrap us up then. So what would you like to plug, Jeff?
All right. What was the #1 movie again this weekend? Avengers Endgame. Check out my review of that. We have a new podcast that's up on iTunes and YouTube. It is, if you haven't heard of Dark Side of the Ring, it's a new wrestling docuseries on Viceland. It's been doing very well. Been getting a lot of acclaim. I interviewed the creators of that series. Check that out. Some other interviews and things are in the works. We'll be going to Double or Nothing in probably a little bit of Starcast later this month. So be on the lookout for coverage from there. Next review is an anime review. Code Geass, Lelouch of Resurrection, which is the continuation of the Code Geass saga. So very good, fun little anime romp if you like anime. And check out the review of movies. Go to iTunes and YouTube for our podcast. It's the 411 Wrestling Interviews podcast on iTunes to check out my latest interviews with Billy Gunn, Eli Drake, and the Dark Side of the Ring creators. Have you watched Dark Side of the Ring yet, Robert?
No.
Okay. Well, you should. You should watch the Bruiser Brody episode and see what you think.
That one, I'm when I start going through those, I'm gonna wind up. I don't think I'm gonna watch the whole series. I'm gonna, I'm gonna pick and choose which ones I'm interested in, and the Bruiser Brody one is definitely one I do want to have a look at.
They're less than an hour, so I mean, it's not a huge time investment into them. So.
Well, I mean, Bruiser Brody's story is intriguing, bizarre, and ultimately leads to people getting away with murder. So
it's a sad story, man. And the finale is going to be Fabulous Moolah, so I'm very curious to see how that one turns out.
That's gonna be interesting. I wonder if I wonder the degree to which they're going to actually talk about because Moolah, while like all people, there's good and bad. And
right.
there's some pretty dark stuff in the Fabulous Moolah's history.
It is Dark Side of the Ring, and they haven't been really sugarcoating it.
Then I imagine we will get some talk about the fact that she basically pimped out the female roster as they were kind of going around.
I think that's what inspired it. So I assume it will. But apparently there have been women who said that never happened with Moolah. I don't know if that's true or not, but some women have claimed the opposite.
Yeah, and I need to see more evidence of it, but that's an interesting decision. That would be an interesting subject for them to kind of tackle. If they're really going to dig into it. So,
but apparently they will, or at least I hope they will. So we'll see. But what happened with Bruiser Brody, from my understanding, is really it was because it happened in Puerto Rico and corrupt justice and legal system over there.
Yeah, the people who killed him actually legitimately got away with it.
It's hard for me to look at Carlos Colon the same way again, though, after that whole thing.
Look, the wrestling business has always been dirty. It's just all there is to it. It's just part of the buy-in if you're a fan.
One of the more interesting things is they started but did not finish an episode on Dino Bravo, which, I know about, but I don't know. Like, I feel like there's room to explore that a little bit more and what happened with him.
I'm curious as to whether or not they'll ever get to Jimmy Snuka.
I think if the show continues, Jimmy Snuka is one they should do.
Because, speaking of getting away with murder.
What was that?
Speaking of getting away with murder.
Yeah. That's basically another situation where I think that happened. It's a rough industry,
It really is.
All right. But yeah, so I think it was a good interview. I would appreciate if you would all check that out, and you should check it out too, Robert.
All right. I will have see about giving that a listen. All right. As for me, I was part of kind of an impromptu alternate commentary for Canelo versus Jacobs from last night, where I scored the fight for Jacobs and those of us who have that opinion are suddenly getting a massive amount of crap. I might have to watch it again just to kind of see if I really will hold that perspective long term, but watching it live, I kind of thought Jacobs edged that out. Not Canelo's best performance, especially down the stretch. So you can listen to that. There is no Damn You Hollywood this Tuesday. Instead, Mark's doing, I believe, a TV party. I forget what the subject material will be. It might be the second season of The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. Don't hold me to that. And Saturday we'll have coverage of UFC 237, so stop by, say hello. Again, it's a pretty solid card on paper, so hopefully it all holds together. And then next week we'll be back here. We will have, again, a review of 237 and a preview of UFC Fight Night 152. This is actually a pretty solid card. I'm a little surprised by this card. The main event is Rafael dos Anjos and Kevin Lee at welterweight. Neil Magny's fighting. Aspen Ladd versus Sijara Eubanks is happening. Antonio Carlos Jr. is back. Good for Shoeface. We have, for some reason, the third fight between Charles Oliveira and Nick Lentz. It is a bizarre fight. Okay, there's some crap here, too. Patrick Cummins is fighting Ed Herman. That's probably going to suck. Julian Eros is fighting. That's always kind of iffy. But we'll give you a full preview of that event next week, so come back for that. Hope you all will. Until next time, on behalf of Jeff, I'm Robert. Thank you again for listening. Thank you for sharing us with your friends. If they're into the sport, please point them in our direction. That's always appreciated. Stay safe out there, and please continue to be well, be safe, and behave.